The princess snatched my fiancé right off the street, then forced me to marry that Playboy nobleman Xie Jiaheng in her stead. When my parents received the imperial decree, they nearly fainted from rage. I calmly said, I'll marry him. In my past life, my parents defied the imperial decree for my sake and were thrown into prison, never to emerge again. As for me, I tried to reclaim my fiancé by beating the grievance drum, only to be publicly executed by the princess's guards. I died. Yet the princess lived happily ever after with my betrothed. Whenever my name was mentioned, he would always say, how could she ever compare to the princess? After being reborn, I received the imperial decree and obediently married him, only to discover his reputation as a wastrel was false. His devotion to me was real. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. When the imperial marriage decree was placed in my hands, the surroundings fell as silent as a graveyard at midnight, all because no one approved of this match. After the decree-bearing eunuch left, my mother clung to me, weeping uncontrollably. Zhua, married to such a wastrel, how will you ever survive? My father also said, the royal family has gone too far in bullying us. 3 days ago, the princess publicly snatched away my newly crowned top scholar fiancé, declaring she would marry him and warning me not to harbor foolish hopes. Unable to swallow this insult, my father petitioned the emperor, stating the princess was already betrothed to that wastrel from the Xie family, and such behavior was utterly improper. Thus I received this imperial decree. The marriage arrangement with the Xie family has now fallen upon my head. The dignity of the Minister of Revenue's legitimate daughter was trampled underfoot by the princess, crushed again and again. Everyone says the Xie family is a pit of fire, but I have no other choice. Father, mother, prepare my wedding dress for me. The wedding date was set urgently. With the bridal procession arriving in just 5 days, many things were still unprepared. Though he may be a wastrel, at least he's sound in body, and I've heard his looks are first-rate. He has the support of the Haining Marquis's household, and my future father-in-law is known for his impartiality. If he acts too outrageously, his father won't stand idly by. I comforted them. In my past life, after my death, I heard that this young master Xie Jiaheng, whose marriage proposal my father had rejected, later became a great general after assisting the new emperor's ascension, enjoying boundless glory. He heard others mention that my parents were still in prison, so he pleaded with the emperor to pardon them, saying they were almost his in-laws and that helping them wouldn't hurt. How he treats others, I don't know, but to my family, he is a benefactor. I don't regret marrying him. All I ask is that in this lifetime, my parents can live well and no longer have to wander and suffer because of me. On the wedding day, the bridal sedan arrived at the Haining Marquis residence amidst the clamor of music and celebration. During the wedding ceremony, Xie Jiaheng was absent, rumored to be indulging in courtesan banquets. The servants sent to find him were searching through pleasure boats one by one, and it seemed he wouldn't return anytime soon. Apologies, sister-in-law. The expected rooster didn't appear. Instead, a pleasant voice spoke beside me. He introduced himself as Xie Jiaheng's cousin, standing in for the ceremony. Clearly, Xie Jiaheng was dissatisfied with me as his bride. From now on, my life in the Marquis household would likely become even more difficult. I frowned slightly and took a step back, maintaining a respectable distance from him, suppressing the urge to turn and leave, and completed the 3 bows, if I remember correctly. Xie Jiaheng's cousin later became the new emperor. The fact that the future emperor was marrying a wife on Xie Jiaheng's behalf suggests their private relationship was truly close. I was escorted back to the bridal chamber by the maids and elderly servants, who informed me that Xie Jiaheng likely wouldn't return tonight and that I should rest on my own. What I had eagerly anticipated since coming of age, sharing the intimacy of trimming candles by the west window with my beloved, turned into me alone lifting the bridal veil, changing clothes, and going to sleep. The next morning, I was awakened by a commotion. Sitting up, I asked my maid, "Who's making such a noise outside?" "It's the young master who's returned. The Marquis is so angry he's enforcing family discipline." "Madam, you must go see." When I arrived, I saw a man sprawled on a prayer mat before the ancestral tablets, muttering, "Mother, look at father, your son was nearly beaten to death." He was wailing dramatically when he heard footsteps. Turning his head, he saw me and froze, then said awkwardly, "So you're my wife?" "I'm not the settling down type. Tomorrow I leave for Jiangnan to study martial arts and who knows when I'll return. How about I write you a divorce paper so you can go home today?" He was born majestic and handsome, appearing to be a martial artist, with a tall and imposing figure. When I spoke to him, I had to look up. The first time I saw him, I was somewhat nervous, yet not afraid. My gaze was firm. I cannot agree to a divorce. Why, everyone sees me as a venomous snake or scorpion. Don't you want to escape this misery sooner? He was somewhat surprised, not expecting me to reject his proposal. To me, this place is already the best refuge. You are no snake or scorpion, you are my husband. If you do not leave, I will not abandon you. I smiled bitterly, for I had no other choice. If I returned after a divorce today, the princess would surely have countless ways to make me suffer. She sees me as a thorn in her flesh, eager to pluck me out at all costs. The minister's residence couldn't withstand her power, but the Marquis of Haining's estate could. My father-in-law has illustrious military achievements, and his family is filled with high-ranking officials and nobles. Even the emperor holds him in high regard. Only here can I survive. Perhaps recalling my plight, Xie Jiaheng's gaze softened slightly when he looked at me. After marriage, I learned to please Xie Jiaheng. Hearing he enjoyed a particular hot pot from a certain restaurant, I painstakingly learned the recipe from the chef, hoping he might spend more time at home. After improving my skills, I made it a few times, and my father-in-law was very pleased. He praised my craftsmanship, saying that since I married into the family, the household had become much livelier. Before his cousin set off back to the border, he also said I had talent and praised my skills. Only Xie Jiaheng was quite contrary. While he said it was nothing special, he finished every last bite of the dishes I made. A few days later, it was heard that the princess threatened to starve herself, forcing the emperor to agree to her marriage with the top scholar. Although the emperor looked down on the scholar's peasant background, he consented to the matter because his beloved princess had spoken. The streets were soon decorated with lanterns and banners in celebration. On the day the princess set out, Xie Jiaheng unusually took me along. He said awkwardly that no matter what, I was his person, and he wouldn't allow others to bully me. He brought me a light veil hat and took me to the best viewing private room in a restaurant. Pointing at the proud and elated top scholar riding a tall horse on the street outside the window, he asked me, "Do you still like him?" I shook my head. No, my connection with him was merely arranged by our parents and matchmakers. In my past life, I beat the grievance drum not because I loved him so much, but because he wrote a letter in the princess's residence and had it delivered to me. The letter said he was forced, how helpless he was, and that he still had me in his heart. If I didn't beat the drum to save him, he would rather die to prove his loyalty. How naive I was back then, thinking I couldn't let down such a passionate and righteous man. So I went and struck the grievance drum. After my death, my spirit drifted into the princess's residence, where I personally heard him say to others, the princess was still hesitating whether to marry me. But now with Ruanju making such a scene, she finally realizes how sought after I am. I'll soon become the imperial son-in-law. He used my life as a stepping stone and took pride in it. His character is truly terrifying. In this life, I obediently accepted the imperial decree and married without anyone interfering. Though he still became the imperial son-in-law, it wasn't the princess marrying down, it was the top scholar entering her family as a live-in husband. When his rural parents heard he was marrying into the princess's mansion, they had nothing kind to say. They complained that with 9 generations of single heirs in their family, the top scholar would now be ending their lineage. They clamored for the princess to bear several children after marriage, with at least one carrying their family name. Upon hearing this, the princess smashed countless jade ornaments and porcelain vases. How could her noble imperial bloodline possibly obey the demands of 2 commoners? Were it not for the upcoming joyous occasion, I would have long since beaten that old couple to death. For this, I even scratched the top scholar's face. Seeing the obvious scars on the face of the scholar on horseback, I felt a great deal of satisfaction. "Do you want to get revenge?" Xie Jiaheng asked me. "How can I get revenge? I grew up strictly disciplined in the household, not even knowing how to do bad things, but that doesn't mean I didn't want to." Xie Jiaheng took out a slingshot and 2 iron pellets, aiming at the champion scholar's horse hooves, ready to shoot. "Wait," I reached out and covered his hand holding the slingshot. "You feel sorry for him?" Xie Jiaheng pouted unhappily, the air around him growing noticeably colder. "We can't ruin your future, you'll be caught. Aren't you afraid of your father's scolding? Let's think of another way." I took his hand and said gently, unwilling to let him take risks for my sake, "Who says he's a playboy? I think my husband is a good man." "Then it's settled," he whispered in my ear, then told me to go home first with the servants, promising to bring me good news later. "Then please be careful in everything. Husband, don't get caught." I nodded without stopping him. It feels so good to have someone protecting me. After 3/4 of an hour, Xie Jiaheng returned, closed the door, and said to me, I had some kids throw firecrackers along the road, they threw them and ran. The horses got spooked and bolted everywhere, not only startling the princess's wedding sedan but also making that top scholar fall off his horse in fright. You should have seen how hilarious the scene was. Keep your voice down, don't let father-in-law hear. I made a silencing gesture at him and pointed to the guards on duty outside the door. Rumor had it that hidden in the shadows of the estate were secret guards who obeyed father-in-law's orders, tasked with protecting everyone's safety. This courtyard must have them too. Xie Jiaheng had clearly gotten carried away and forgotten about this. He quickly covered his mouth and grinned at me, but soon enough, father-in-law came to know of this matter. He punished Xie Jiaheng by making him kneel in the ancestral hall until dawn before he could come out. After my father-in-law left, I secretly slipped into the ancestral hall. Facing a drowsy Xie Jiaheng, I pointed to the basket in my hand and asked, "Are you hungry?" He clearly didn't expect a well-bred young lady like me to sneak in to see him in the middle of the night. Waving his hand, he urged me to leave quickly, saying, "Be careful, or my father might punish you too." "He won't. Father-in-law is reasonable. It's not like I set off firecrackers to disrupt the wedding procession," I said with a smile, opening the basket in my hand. Inside were many delicious treats: Osmanthus chicken, braised pork knuckle, and his favorite sticky rice dumplings. Considering we were in the ancestral hall, drinking alcohol in front of the ancestors wouldn't be appropriate, so I only brought a pot of light tea. Everything here is his usual favorite. I figured since he's been busy helping me get revenge tonight, he probably hasn't had time for dinner yet. "Is this Osmanthus chicken from East Gate Alley? And the braised pork knuckle too? Did you specially buy these for me?" He wolfed down the food ravenously. "Just picked them up on my way back." I poured him some tea. "You're the best, my lady." Suddenly he rested his head on my shoulder, his warm breath tickling my neck. My face flushed red as I dared not move a muscle. This was the first time in both my lifetimes that I'd been this close to a man other than my father. I miss my mother. Whenever I made mistakes and was punished by kneeling in the ancestral hall, she would always bring me food. His eyes reddened as he spoke. "I heard my mother-in-law had encountered horse bandits 5 years ago while returning to Jiangnan to visit relatives, fearing her chastity would be compromised. She took her own life with a dagger. She was a woman of unyielding spirit. From now on, I'll bring you food." I grasped his hand and made this solemn promise. At the palace banquet that day, there was no avoiding it. I encountered the princess. I tried to slip away through a side path, but the princess wouldn't have it. She strode over and lashed a whip straight at my face. "Wanzhu, stop right there." "Greetings, Your Highness." I promptly dropped to my knees, narrowly dodging the whip. The princess looked down at me, kneeling at her feet, with smug satisfaction. "How does it feel, Wanzhu, to marry a wastrel in my stead? As for the top scholar, I've been thoroughly pleased with him. I, your humble subject's wife, thank the princess for matchmaking. The young master is very good." I didn't give her the answer she wanted, but I truly couldn't bring myself to slander Xie Jiaheng just to satisfy the princess's vanity. The princess burst into laughter as if she'd heard the most ridiculous joke. "Xie Jiaheng, that good for nothing. I've heard he can't carry a load on his shoulders nor lift with his hands. Yawns the moment he starts studying, but is quite skilled at playing with birds and visiting brothels. You actually like such trash, Wanzhu. You're no better than him after all. I've heard you two still haven't consummated your marriage. Aren't you just being stubborn as a dead duck's mouth, still pining for my consort? Let me advise you, don't let your ambitions soar higher than the heavens while your fate is thinner than paper." With shameless audacity, she deliberately stepped on my hand, wanting to see me writhe in pain and lose my composure. I find the heir apparent quite admirable. No matter what she said, I kept repeating this phrase, suppressing my pain as I answered with neither humility nor arrogance. I couldn't bear to hear anyone belittle Xie Jiaheng in my presence. She should count herself lucky to be a princess. Had she been any other woman, I would have already leapt up to scratch her face and pull her hair in a brawl. Let me tell you this, the emperor has long been wary of the Haining Marquis's household. Who knows, your precious heir apparent might lose his head one day. She left with uproarious laughter. The emperor's wariness toward the Haining Marquis's household was indeed common knowledge, but such words should never be spoken openly. The emperor's suspicion would chill the hearts of loyal ministers and renowned generals. Coming from her mouth, it made little difference than if it had come from the emperor himself. This was a blatant trampling of the dignity of the Marquis of Haining's household. The princess is indeed beautiful, but exceptionally foolish. What happened to your hand? After I returned from the banquet, Xie Jiaheng noticed my hand while serving food and immediately stood up. He is extremely protective of his own. don't go after the princess, it doesn't hurt anymore. I grabbed hold of him. Don't be rash. My father-in-law also reached out to pull him back. With his greater strength, Xie Jiaheng couldn't break free and had no choice but to sit back down. But I can't swallow this anger. Xie Jiaheng lowered his head to take out some ointment and began applying it to my wound, his eyes brimming with concern. Xie Jiaheng was an exceptionally simple soul. If someone treated him well, he would go to great lengths to return the kindness. We had gotten along quite well during this time. So naturally he couldn't stand seeing me bullied like this. Just bear with it a little longer, it's almost over. Father-in-law set down his chopsticks, merely patting his shoulder before giving me a reassuring glance as he headed toward the study. Clearly, he too was struggling to hold back. First, after the engagement was settled, she publicly abducted the top scholar, placing a glaring cuckold's hat on Xie Jiaheng's head. Then, she broke off the engagement again to marry someone else, turning the Haining Marquisate into a laughingstock. Now, she even openly humiliates his daughter-in-law. This is a complete disregard for him. The Marquis, that night when we returned to our room, Xie Jiaheng, considerate of my injured hand, did not sleep in the study for the first time. He said I might need care during the night and feared the maids outside wouldn't hear me, so he moved a bed to stay by my side. If you need anything at night, just tell me. Thank you, my lord. I lay on my side watching him, and when our eyes met, his expression darkened. Go to sleep. He pressed his lips together, as if to hide something, and averted his gaze. The atmosphere grew subtly intimate in the silence. The next morning when I awoke, there was a jade bracelet by the bed. The steward said it had belonged to the late princess consort. His action showed he already considered me his wife in his heart, making me feel instantly sweet and delighted. I don't know what father-in-law said to him, but Xie Jiaheng has recently changed completely. Frequently visiting father-in-law's study, he became busier. Father-in-law secured him a nominal position in the army, which, though called nominal, kept him away all day. I could only see him on rest days, as he usually slept in the military camp. That day when he returned, I was changing clothes. Seeing my exposed skin, he quickly turned away. My lord, my hand has healed. When shall we consummate our marriage? I turned around and suddenly embraced him, pressing my cheek against his tense back. In matters of love, someone must take the initiative. Since this fake libertine is truly a gentleman at heart, then I'll be the one to act. Not yet. We must wait a little longer. He turned to face me, pulling me into his arms and kissing my forehead. Today, I'm not afraid of widowhood. Nothing will happen to you. I understood. He feared that if his rebellion failed, it would implicate me. He wanted to wait until everything was settled before making me his wife. Are you sure? His breathing grew rapid at my invitation. I didn't answer, only reached to undo his collar. The sky darkened gradually, the candlelight inside flickered and swayed, not extinguishing until deep into the night. The next morning, unlike usual, he didn't leave early for the military camp. He stayed to paint my eyebrows with me. He praised the shape of my brows, matched a dress for me, and found all these boudoir amusements delightful, not the slightest bit impatient. We stayed close together, watching the autumn sun and falling leaves, drinking Osmanthus wine at night while leaning against each other and feasting on crabs. But these good times didn't last long. The border war grew intense, and my father-in-law had to march to battle. This time, he went along too. When we parted, Xie Jiaheng even thoughtfully prepared a divorce document for me, saying, if I don't return safely, take this and go back to your family. He also left me a poisoned dagger, saying it could be used for self-defense if necessary. Of course, both he and my father-in-law left me with many hidden guards. They hoped that when we met again, it would be a safe reunion of the whole family. On the night my father-in-law set off for battle, a major incident occurred in the palace. What are you all staring at me for? What kind of look is that? The princess had gone to a male brothel to drink with friends when someone knocked her unconscious with a club. When she woke up, she found that all her hair and eyebrows had been shaved off. A trembling servant brought her a mirror. Ah, my face. The princess screamed as she saw the hairless monster in the mirror. The onlooking commoners turned their heads at the sound, only to be terrified and drop to their knees. Her skin, overly whitened with lead powder, now devoid of hair, left only a ghastly pale face. Paired with her hysterical expression, she looked like a demon. Who did this? I'll have their entire family executed, the princess shrieked as she fled the male brothel, covering her face and rushing into her carriage, heading straight to the palace to lodge a complaint. The princess had many enemies, and she listed every possible one she could think of before the emperor, with particular emphasis on the Marquis of Haining's household. Father Emperor, you must stand up for me, She thought the emperor would surely take her side, clutching his sleeve and weeping pitifully with pearly tears. Enough. If not for your usual arrogance and domineering ways, how could this have happened? Consider this a lesson for you. Go back and behave yourself. Don't leave your residence for the time being. The emperor was also startled by her appearance, but more than that, he felt humiliated. A proper princess should stay in her residence. What was she doing at a male brothel? Was that any place for a princess? Father Emperor, your daughter believes this matter is related to the Haining Marquis's household. I want to arrest that Ruanzhu and subject her to harsh interrogation. We will surely get results. The princess was desperate to find a scapegoat, her eyes filled with venomous hatred. As if she wished to see me dead. The Haining Marquis and his son just left, and now you want to target his daughter-in-law. Shaking military morale is a serious matter. Have you lost your mind? The emperor was so furious that he slapped her. At this moment, he needed the Haining Marquis and his son to guard the border for him. How could he possibly agree to harm me? Father, you only care about court affairs. The princess, who had never been struck before, left in tears. After leaving, she returned to her princess manner. She had expected the top scholar to comfort and counsel her, but upon hearing she had been struck in the palace, he asked, "Did His Majesty blame me for failing to keep you in check?" "What do you mean? You're only thinking of yourself at a time like this." Furious at his selfishness, the princess lashed out with her whip. The top scholar had grown accustomed to her beatings and instinctively dodged to the side. Just as he was about to coax her with sweet words, his gaze fell upon the spot where her hair had been shaved off. Suddenly, something seemed to trigger his memory, and he crouched down, retching violently. "You dare despise me? How dare you look down on this princess?" Never in her life had the princess endured such humiliation. She lashed out with her whip again and again, momentarily forgetting to control her strength. "Ah, my face." The top scholar touched the bloody gash on his cheek and let out a piercing scream. He stared at the princess in disbelief. He had always known her to be spoiled and willful, fond of whipping others, but he never imagined she would go this far. His face must be ruined. Call the imperial physician. Help. The top scholar scrambled up from the ground and stumbled out, shouting as he went. That night, many heard his agonized screams. When the top scholar's parents saw his face, their hearts ached unbearably. Their hatred for the princess reached its peak in that moment. The scholar's father said, "My son, why not divorce the princess? After 10 years of bitter study to earn your honors, becoming her consort only landed you a meaningless post, and now she's shown such cruelty. It's not worth it." The top scholar's mother said, "My son, this title of yours has brought you nothing but trouble. Had I known, you'd have been better off marrying the minister's daughter. That girl surely wouldn't be as willful as this princess." The top scholar felt somewhat swayed by their words, but since ancient times, there had never been a precedent for a royal son-in-law to initiate a divorce from a princess. According to the law, the princess was the master, and the royal son-in-law was the servant. If he dared to propose a divorce, he would be subjected to 50 strokes of the rod. Afraid he couldn't endure such punishment, he let the matter drop for the time being, but from then on, he gradually distanced himself from the princess. A year later, when news reached the capital that his father-in-law's faction had rebelled at the border, my parents had already gone into hiding long before. Logically, I should have left after receiving the letter. The covert guards all urged me to depart early, but I felt that every moment I could buy them was precious. Only by remaining active in the capital would the palace remain at ease regarding my father-in-law and the others. With my solitary efforts, I dulled the court's vigilance. Their campaign became twice as effective with half the effort, and fewer lives were lost. On the day I was imprisoned, my father-in-law and Xie Jiaheng had already advanced to a location 100 miles away, and the capital was nearly surrounded. "You vile wretch." The princess finally had the freedom to torment me without restraint. She condescended to visit the prison, slapping me across the face. Blood soon trickled down my cheek. "Tell me, was it you who sent someone to mess with my hair and eyebrows?" After half a year, she still hung up on this. How utterly foolish. "No." I shook my head. "It was my father-in-law's doing. He said the debt owed to my Xie family must be repaid. If it weren't for you, I would be the one married to Xie Jiaheng now. If he ascends the throne, I would be the empress." The princess slapped me again, held firmly by others. I couldn't move at all and could only endure the blows passively. So it was all for ambition after all. How ridiculous. She's already a princess who can command the wind and rain at will. What significance does the position of empress hold for her? I don't want Xie Jiaheng to ascend the throne. Selfishly, I can't bear to share him with others. An emperor must maintain 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. Pa, I'm not the one who stole another's betrothed. You chose the top scholar yourself, now you regret it. I spat a bloody mouthful at her cropped hair and sparse eyebrows, feeling immensely satisfied. Ah. The princess wiped the spittle from her dress and raised her hand to strike me again. Princess, that's enough. This is the most important hostage in His Majesty's hands. If you kill him, how will we negotiate with the rebels? The Minister of Justice couldn't help but step forward to intervene. At this critical moment, the princess still only had personal vengeance in her eyes. He was utterly speechless. We'll stop here for today. I'll deal with you tomorrow. The princess flicked her sleeves and stormed off in a huff, feeling she hadn't had her fill of revenge yet. She didn't come the next day either. She had fled, without taking the top scholar with her. Over the past 6 months, her relationship with the top scholar had deteriorated badly. Displeased that his scarred face had ruined his good looks, she had begun keeping male favorites like the princesses of the previous dynasty. When she escaped in the dead of night, she even took several of these favorites with her. The emperor had fled, and nearly all the powerful figures in the capital had run away. I didn't wait for her, nor for the emperor. I waited for the top scholar. Wanzhou, I'll take you away. He barged into the nearly unguarded imperial prison with a ragtag group of followers. Where to? Watching him and his men break open the prison locks, I remained unmoved. He wasn't that kind-hearted otherwise. He would have chosen to abandon our betrothal for the princess all those years ago. Let's flee. Find a place to live in seclusion. All right, I regret everything. Ignoring my struggles, he grabbed my hand and pulled me along as we ran, speaking urgently. You want to use me to threaten my husband? Only when he dragged me onto the city gate tower, facing the hundreds of thousands of troops below, did I begin trembling uncontrollably from my fear of heights. I have no choice. I want to live. As long as he lets me leave safely, I won't harm you. Even now, the top scholar was still making excuses, refusing to admit his wrongdoing. He reached for the sword his companion held, preparing to take me hostage. Swish, I drew a dagger from my sleeve. And the sharp blade slit his throat. When the top scholar fell covered in blood, his eyes were wide open. Death had come before he could close them. This sudden turn of events startled those around him. They tried to subdue me, but the hidden guards who arrived shortly after left none of them alive. The imperial prison is empty. Why wouldn't I escape? Of course I came prepared, I murmured to myself, staring at the corpses littering the ground. I only wanted to protect myself. Trapping them like turtles in a jar was a spur-of-the-moment idea. I had intended to catch the princess, but who knew the top scholar would come instead, open the central gate, welcome the prince and his heir into the capital. I shouted to the hidden guards. They were masters who could take on 100 foes each, while the city's soldiers were merely the old, weak, and sick, no match for them. One by one, they grew excited, for the glory of founding a new dynasty was within reach. I was thrilled too, for I would finally reunite with my husband. Xie Jiaheng, my lady. Xie Jiaheng rushed toward me the moment he entered the city. He looked like he had weathered many storms. His once fair and smooth skin had grown rough and darkened considerably. The youthful air about him was fading, his posture becoming more upright. He had grown into a towering tree that could shelter me from wind and rain. Husband, my body went limp, and I leaned weakly into his embrace. Trembling uncontrollably, you've suffered, my love, your father and the others are all well. Xie Jiaheng held me tightly in his arms before finally releasing me after a long while, entrusting me to the group of shadow guards. He still had important matters to attend to. I saw him again 3 evenings later. My lady, I'm home. I was napping under the grapevine when his kiss descended upon me, carrying an air of dominance and scorching heat. Carry me to our room. I opened my eyes and wrapped my arms around his neck. Xie Jiaheng carried me back to our chamber, where we talked and reveled through the night. He shared the hardships of his past year, while I told him all the recent amusing happenings in the capital. Finally, he said, "Give me a child, I can give you a stable life." I nodded and asked the question that had been weighing on me. Will your father ascend the throne? Xie Jiaheng shook his head. That's not his ambition. And I don't have the ability to govern the court. I'm only suited for warfare. The throne should go to my cousin. If you prefer the capital, I'll stay here to guard it with you. If you prefer the borderlands, we'll make our life there. I breathed a sigh of relief. Having no ambition to become empress, I'll follow your lead. Wherever you wish to go, I'll accompany you. Xie Jiaheng said he preferred life at the border, free and unrestrained. The capital had too many rules. And he found it stifling. I naturally agreed, for it was my good fortune to walk through life hand in hand with him. A few days later, news of the princess's death came from outside the city. one of her male concubines had stolen her money and was caught in the act while attempting to flee. During the struggle, the concubine accidentally pushed her down the stairs, killing her instantly. Among the common people, not a single soul was willing to collect her body, leaving it to be devoured by wild dogs. 3 months later, I returned to the borderlands with him and my father-in-law. A new princely mansion had been built there, and I transitioned from being the heir's wife of a marquis's household to the heir's wife of a prince's household, living out my days in peace and contentment. The following year, I gave birth to a daughter for Xie Jiaheng. The end.